Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. I know it's been a little while since my last upload. It's been a week. I've been a little busy as of late, so it's been a little bit crazy recently, so I apologize. But I'm here today for another video. I'm going to do my picks for this week. Real quickly though, before I do that, I do want to just jump in and take a real quick look back at what happened last week because I didn't make a video talking about it. So before my picks for this week, let's throw up my picks from last week. You can see them here. It was interesting. Obviously, huge weekend for the NYXL and for the Philadelphia Fusion, coming up big in two games where I actually predicted both of those teams. Well, the NYXL predicted to be the Valiant, but I didn't think the Fusion would win a game this past weekend. So, huge win for them over the Dragons, and then, of course, a big win for them over the Hangzhou Spark. Huge disappointing weekend from the Washington Justice. I didn't pick them to win either of the games, but they still disappointed me. So that's something. Very interesting North America region or Western region. Obviously, Paris Eternal looking very good, beating the Fuel, but then they lose to the Uprising, and then the Uprising lose to the Shock, but the Shock lost to the Fuel, so it's just like, well, I don't even know anymore what's going on. Western region's looking weird, but I think the Atlanta Reign look very good. They're the team right now that I would say have the biggest argument to be considered kind of the best team in the Western region. But that's just a quick look at what happened last week. Let's dive in. Let's talk about this weekend. This video will be probably a little shorter than a lot of my normal ones, but it'll be kind of a long. It won't be too bad. So let's just jump in and let's take a look at our first set of games in the Western region on Friday. Today, we have the London Spitfire taking on the Toronto Defiant. I don't think this one should be particularly close. I think the Defiant are better than the Spitfire. I think that it is something where you look and you kind of say a Defiant team, if they are not playing to their best, could definitely lose to a Spitfire team. They look a lot better with Sparker in, and they've definitely had some time to learn and adjust over the past few weeks. And they keep getting better and better and better. But in my soul, I don't think that it's going to be enough for them to get over the hump of the Toronto Defiant, and I want the Bread Bowl to be a thing at the end of the season. So, for my own just enjoyment, partially, I am picking the Defiant to win this one. I'll say it's probably like a 3-1. That's just kind of an assumption or a guess, but I think that's probably close to where it goes. Next game in the Western region is the Vancouver Titans taking on the Boston Uprising. I don't think this one should be close at all. The Vancouver Titans, obviously winless team. The Boston Uprising look to be a pretty good team. They look like a pretty decent contender for that kind of play-in tournament. Just kind of be there and present and actually look decent for it. They've gotten some good wins. Obviously, they went over the Paris Eternal recently. Was very good. They had a win over the Houston Outlaws back in the Summer Showdown. So they looked pretty good overall. I think that they're still a pretty solid team. So I think that they should win this one over the Titans pretty easily. And I think it should be like a 3-0. Maybe the Titans have improved enough to take a map. But right now, I would favor the Uprising pretty heavily for this series. Let's move on to Saturday. First match of the weekend from the Eastern region, the NYXL take on the Philadelphia Fusion. This is my first big pick game for the weekend. These two teams have not been particularly close this season. The NYXL have dominated this season series. 2 3-1 victories for them. Both of these teams are coming off good weekends where they both went undefeated. Both teams with a win over the Shanghai Dragons. So who really knows what to expect from either of these teams right now? I think that the Fusion looked better overall, and it's hard to say that for certain just because you look at the Fusion went up against 2RU and Develop Shanghai Dragons. The NYXL went up against the Shanghai Dragons, who weren't necessarily on full try mode, but they had their main roster in, so it was a little bit different there. So it's kind of difficult to say for sure. But I was impressed with the Fusion. I thought they looked very good. And considering I think they definitely had the more impressive win over the Dragons, which obviously, like I said, Develop, who are you? A little bit different there in that situation. They also beat a Hangzhou Spark team that I thought was better than them recently. And so I think that the Fusion should be favored to win the series. I think it'll be close. I don't think New York will give up without any sort of fight. They have obviously been beating up the Fusion whenever they got the opportunity to do this so far this season. So I think it'll be close, probably like a 3-2 or a close 3-1. But I just feel a little more confident about the Fusion right now. I picked the Fusion, I'm pretty sure, all 3 times, and they've let me down every time. So maybe this time I will be happy with either result. Because the Fusion win, I get to pick them right. If the NYXL win, my team wins. So it's a win-win for me. Next is another great game in the APAC region. Seoul Dynasty taking on the Shanghai Dragons. The only reason why this isn't my big pick game is really just because I don't know what type of dragons are going to show up. I don't know if we're going to get dragons trying their hardest or dragons just kind of, throwing it in, just kind of tossing in the towel for this part of the season so they can kind of rest up and look a lot better. I think the Seoul Dynasty are a very good team. I think they've actually been a pretty consistently solid top-level team all season. They've been really struggling when they get to those tournament games. They've gotten into those knockouts. They've had their biggest struggles, but they've also lost to teams that were very good in these. They haven't lost to a team that you kind of look at and go like, they don't really feel like a team that should be there. No, the Dynasty have been good and they've been consistent. So I think this should be the time they get their win against the Dragons. Maybe the Dragons kind of reel it in for next week and say, you know what, we definitely want to be getting these wins again. We don't want to be losing some of these games. Let's bring it back, go a little bit harder for this week, not really try to go too hard, but we'd like to be able to kind of make sure our players are doing a little bit better. We want a shot maybe at the Countdown Cup. Who knows? We'll see. I don't take the Dynasty for this one. I think it'll be close. I'll say a 3-2. But, yeah. Final APAC game for Saturday is the Chengdu Hunters taking on the Guangzhou Charge. I don't think this one will be very close. I have not been impressed with the Guangzhou Charge. You all know that if you've watched enough. I don't think they look very good. Chengdu Hunters are arguably the second best team in the league when it comes to these wrecking ball compositions. I expect them to look pretty good. I think they should win this game pretty easily. It's just to be expected when you have a good team against a team that is not very good. Speaking of a good team against a team that's not very good, we have a Dallas Fuel taking on the London Spitfire to kick off the Western region action for Saturday. I mean, come on. Like, this is the Dallas Fuel against one of the worst teams in the league. Of course, the Dallas Fuel are going to win this game. They should win this game. It shouldn't really be much of a challenge for them. I think this one should be pretty easy. I am going to say this is a 3-0 for the Dallas Fuel. They're just better. There's no real other way to look at it. Second Western Region match on Saturday is the Florida Mayhem taking on the Atlanta Reign. Once again, not a very good Mayhem team, at least recently, taking on a very good Reign team. Reign are on the rise. They look to potentially be the best team in the Western region right now. I think they win this game over the Mayhem 3-0. It shouldn't be difficult. Mayhem don't look very good. I assume Checkmate's still going to be playing main tank. So for me, this is really just kind of like this is a pretty obvious pick. Atlanta Reign win this game. Final Western Region match for Saturday is the Toronto Defiant taking on the Washington Justice. I think this game could be pretty good. I think the Justice are overall a better team. I think they just have more talent. But we've been seeing the same problems with the Justice all season, which is they're slow to react. In-game, they have a very slow tempo. They kind of speed it up in the second weekend they play in a tournament cycle, but that first weekend they never look very good, especially with the hero pools. That's where they've looked the worst. And the other problem I think that the Justice have is just that they don't really seem to have like a clear kind of leader in game. So they're kind of slow to adapt to the meta as well as slow to make decisions in game because they don't have a very decisive leader. But I think when it comes to just like pure talent, they still beat teams where talent-wise they're better, they still win. The Justice seem to lose games when the talent is equal or slightly better, and they get either rolled early in a tournament cycle or it's very close late in a tournament cycle. When they play against teams that they are better than by record and better than just like on paper, they win pretty much every time. They're very gatekeepery in that way, though they have the ability to get some of those big wins. Obviously, we've seen them beat the Paris Eternal, we've seen them beat the LA Gladiators, so we know they can do that type of stuff. So I think they should win this one. I think it should be like a 3-0 or a 3-1. I'm going to say it's a 3-1 because then the Defiant are talented enough, and I think that they have shown some flashes of brilliance, but it just hasn't been consistent enough for me to feel confident to say that they are definitely going to take a win over a Justice team that I like, but I don't love anymore. Moving on to the Sunday matches, Eastern Region, Philadelphia Fusion, Seoul Dynasty, another big pick potential. It's not my big pick because I wanted to do one from NA, and there's a really good NA game on Sunday. This should be a good game. I'm going to give it to the Dynasty. As good as the Fusion have looked recently, I just don't know if Seoul are going to drop this game. I think they're really good, and it's definitely possible. Don't get me wrong, this game should be very close. I think it should be like a 3-2, 3-1. That's close. But I just like the Dynasty a little bit better, so I'm taking them in this series because, dang it, it has been quite a season for both of these teams, but the Dynasty have just been ever so slightly better so far. Next is the Chengdu Hunters taking on the NYXL. I think this one could be pretty close, and it has the potential to go either way, but we've been seeing Wrecking Ball compositions for the most part for both teams, and this meta has just been a lot of Wrecking Ball. Chengdu is just better at that than the NYXL are. I think the NYXL are more talented on the DPS lineup. Leave, I think, is more talented than anybody, and I think he's incredible. And Jinmu in the right meta, of course, with the Pharah, can definitely kind of outclass anybody. But if you're getting a Guangbong and Flora composition from the NYXL, I think that pretty much just kind of... I think Flora can match Leave, and I think the Guangbong is just better than whatever you're going to put for the Chengdu Hunters. If you're running like a Tracer McCree or something like that, that duo is just so deadly and so dangerous. So it is an interesting matchup, but I just think the tank difference really favors the Hunters, and I think that they should find this series win. I think it might be a little close. I'm going to say a 3-1, though, for the Chengdu Hunters. I think they're better, and I think that the NYXL are going to get a little bit outmatched by this Hunters team, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Final Eastern Region match for this weekend is the Shanghai Dragons taking on the Guangzhou Charge. I'm going to go in the favor of the Dragons for this one. I don't think the Charge are very good. I think that even a Dragons team that isn't trying their hardest should be able to beat a Charge team trying it at their hardest. I just think that the Dragons are that good. You know, they were challenged by the NYXL. It took the NYXL 5 maps to beat the Charge. Or to beat the Dragons. I don't think it's going to happen for the Charge. Dragons, I think, are too good. I think they've kind of... Or I think they go into this match a little bit more focused than they were last week. And so I think that this is one that goes the way of the Dragons, and I think it's not too close. I think it'll be a 3-0. Boston Uprising taking on the Florida Mayhem, first match in the Western region on Sunday. This one shouldn't be very close. Uprising are the better team. They look a lot better. Mayhem still struggling, still not looking very good. Really rough, 3/4 of this season, but, they've only played, they haven't played anything yet this tournament cycle, but they haven't looked very good, and I think that this one should go the way of the Uprising pretty easily. I am going to give this a 3-0 score for the Uprising. My second and final big pick for the week is the Atlanta Reign taking on the Dallas Fuel. I think this series is going to be a doozy. I think it's going to be very, very good. I think it's two teams that look very good. And I think both teams are doing everything they can to try to stay at the top of the Western region. But right now, I still feel better about the Dallas Fuel. The Atlanta Reign obviously have been finding the most success recently of any Western region team. When you look at the Countdown Cup so far, it's the only team that's 2-0 in the Western region. Dallas Fuel 1-1 after their loss to the Eternal. But I think the Fuel are just kind of improving over time. And I don't know what compositions we're going to look at. I did not get to watch as much this past weekend as I would have liked to, so there's definitely some holes in my my understanding of the meta in the Western region. I know there's been some Winston, some Orisa, which is what the Reign like to use, of course. And we've seen, of course, some Wrecking Ball. Teams are kind of experimenting different compositions. But I think the Fuel really have matched up well with the Reign so far this season, and they can still run Tracer Sombra comps. They can run Doomfist or Genji comps. You know, they have options. They can run Pharah comps. I think those things should work pretty well against the Reign. So I am going to go with the Fuel, but I think this will be close. It's been a 3-2 the last like 3 times these teams have played. I think it'll be a 3-2 again. I just think these teams are really good, really close together, and I'm a big fan of what we've seen so far from the Reign and the Fuel. So this should be a good one. Final match of the weekend is the Vancouver Titans taking on the Washington Justice. This one's gone the way of the Justice. This one shouldn't be close. If it is, that's a problem. You know, that's just the way things are. Justice are the better team. They should win this one pretty easily. I'm going to predict a 3-0 for the Justice because I think they're better, and I think it should just not be much of a challenge for them. So those are my picks for this week. I'll throw them up real quick. You can see them. I will try to get back to consistently uploading regular schedules. Hopefully this week it gets a little bit better. I'm busy again, unfortunately, so things may be a little bit off as we go into, you know, next week and possibly the week after, but I am trying my best to get everything in as regularly as I can, so bear with me. Thank you for supporting me through this time, and I hope you're all doing your best. I hope you're all staying safe, staying healthy. But that's all from me. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing for more like it in the future. And yeah, until next time, bye bye.